What's up, everybody? Just Donut Lance here, bringing you with a brand new video. We're going to be talking about Pepe, power creep, and a whole bunch of other things that have gone through over the past couple of days with the recent occurrence of the adjusted ban list. So, one by one, I want to discuss points that each side has made, and this is not in any way a response to Glasgow or MegaCapitalG, even though this is kind of convenient how they're tied in together. But I actually feel quite passionate about the subject for a multitude of reasons. Mostly because I believe that Pepe is an unfair deck, but I believe that certain hits were a little unnecessary. I want to appease the Pepe players for a moment here, in saying that certain cards on this list, as of right now, should not have been hit. I want to say that because I believe that certain cards needed to exist from Pepe to make other decks good. So, for example, Luster Pendulum Dragon, even though it's at 1, and Skull Crobat Joker, I believe that those cards are good enough to be played in most decks. Luster Pendulum in general is really good. In general, is good in Pendulum decks in general, mostly because it makes Draco Ignister and all of that stuff. So for the most part, this card is going to probably even still be see play at one in most Pendulum decks from here on out. I believe that even then, Cleaforce were playing this card long before it was on anyone's radar. Magispectors are playing this card, and I'm going to assume that Amorphages probably will play this card. Dynamis can probably play this card if they wanted to. So but moving on, another card that I believe that probably didn't really deserve to be hit right now is actually Skull Crobat Joker, mostly because it's a Stratos. Every deck has their Stratos. Every deck has cards that are probably even better than Stratos. Deneb is pretty good, but Deneb is power creeped out. Tele-Dads in general are power creeped out of the meta to the point where they're hardly running, and Pepe is the result of that. Pepe is a primary example of that. They could easily compete with Cosmos if they had the necessary tools to be fast enough to do that. They have ways of countering cards. Satella Nova Alpha is still probably one of the best traps in the entire game, but because it's a trap, it's not good. But I'm going to stress this by saying that the reason why people are upset because Pepe being hit so quickly is because it didn't have enough time to shine in the meta. Do you realize that at any point in the game, Konami could release the ban list tomorrow, reversing these changes, but people would still be mad at it? Do you realize that either way, there is no win-win situation to this? Either they get the majority on their side that does enjoy playing this game, or you piss off a minority like Pepe. And believe me when I say that Pepe is a strenuous minority. Even most Pepe players believe that this deck was too good for the game. Heck, some people might even say that it's even better than Tele-Dad back in its prime. So that should tell you something. Also, we're going to be talking about the level of power creep in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh. So we're going to be talking about traps in general. I guess anti-spell fragrance could be considered one of the best. Anti-spell fragrance is one of the best floodgates currently out there, but it's not good. It obviously didn't do enough to stop Pepe to warrant its spot on the ban list if it ever did get banned. The reason for this is because, well, Pepe still managed to OTK or still managed to go forward regardless of how anti-spell fragrance worked. When anti-spell fragrance is in the meta, the last well-known event, YCS Atlanta, that Pepe had a showing, still took 29 spots of the top 32. That should tell you something. That should tell you that even with all these precautions in place, with all of these anti-meta floodgates in place, it did not matter to Pepe. It absolutely did not matter. The other portion were probably Monarch and Cosmos players because, well, they earned their way up to that spot. I'm not saying that those who played Pepe didn't earn their spot, but those who played Cosmos or Monarchs or any other deck regionals or at that YCS was at a severe disadvantage compared to Pepe, because one, the numbers were great that they're going to be facing this deck, and two, there's not very many counters to this deck. And that's the problem. It's not the fact that of the deck existing. It's not the fact that this deck exists is the problem. It's the fact that there's no countermeasures to this deck. Some people look at Cosmos, Necros, and Cleaforts, and Dragon Rulers, and say, well, these cards or these decks were tier 0. They were not. So, some people were even saying that these decks were cancerous into the game. But they had enough counters, they had enough countermeasures implemented into the game to where these decks could be competed against, and there was still a fighting chance for each and every single one of these. Necros honestly did die to anti-spell fragrance to a certain extent, because they couldn't just YOLO their ritual spells. Similarly, if you played Mind Drain, or you activated stuff like that inherently didn't care about ending your battle phase, or cards in general that just fixated on destroying Necros, you had a very good chance. Back when Necros was a thing, people played Imperial Ironwall just to stop this deck, because in order for them to regain traction with their cards, they had to banish some of their cards. Additionally, if you played Vanity's Emptiness was a key component to fighting Necros, because they couldn't special summon. Back then, when Necros probably wouldn't have a fighting chance when Vanity's Emptiness was at 3 for that brief moment of time when everyone had a chance to play it. Back then, people were playing this deck and still losing to cards to decks like Cleaforts and Shadalls, because they had countermeasures. Similarly, Cleaforts are a primary example of this. Sure, some people might say that the Tower Turbo deck was absolutely garbage, and it was. It was garbage in the same way that most burn decks are garbage. It's garbage in the same way that most Exodia decks are garbage, because they add no competitive skill to the game. And I believe that if Cleaforts and Necros were still at their full potential today, they would probably be power created by Pepe. The reason why I say this is because we haven't seen a deck like Pepe before. Pepe was one of the fastest decks anyone could ever have seen. And you know what? Konami even admits this right here. There's a lot of buzz these days about the Perform Pal and Performage deck that have been growing in strength. And while we always expected this deck to be very strong, if not the strongest, is strangling some of the other competitive decks right now, and we're taking steps to even things out a little bit. Some people might say, well, they didn't have to kill the deck. You're right, they didn't have to kill the deck, but Konami, in their eyes, they felt as though Pepe was strong enough to warrant a ban list. They felt that it was on the same level, if not better than Tele-Dad, to warrant an emergency ban list. Do you realize how good that must be? Do you realize how many times we've ever had an emergency ban list? We've only had 3. This is the third one. One was in Tele-Dad format, and the other was when Cyberstein got banned. And back then, the decks that did run those cards were absolutely insane. Moving on. We're gonna discuss trap cards in general about being power creep. This is in response to MegaCapitalG, and in fact, I actually agree with that sentiment. That traps need to cover more ground in order to remain relevant. Do you realize how good a Stormy Mirror Force is right now? It's not. You want to know why? Because it's too slow. You want to know what is a good trap right now? Anti-spell fragrance. But you want to know why? Because it has an immediate impact on the meta. So, saying that traps need to cover more ground. Traps like Bottomless Trap Hole and Solemn Warning are at 1 because are at 1 for some reason. No one knows why, but they're at 1. The reason why I believe that they're at 1 is because they're too harmful to the decks of the future. They're too harmful for pendulum decks. However, there are only methods of stopping them. Believe me when I say this, that when people are playing Solemn Warning and Bottomless Trap Hole, they're not playing it because it's good. They're playing it because it's a counter to the meta. Even if it's at 1, it's still a counter nonetheless. Torrential Tribute is awful right now, mostly because it destroys your side of the field as well. And not only that, it does nothing to Pendulum decks. That's why people don't play it. Bottomless does do something to Pendulum decks because it banishes them. They don't go to the top of the extra, they just banish them. However, conversely, Solemn Warning does the same thing as Bottomless. It stops Pendulum decks, and that's the reason why these cards are so good right now. Is because they do that. The only reason why Vanity's Emptiness isn't being played for that same reason is because it kills itself when you activate anything. So you can't play Vanity's Emptiness right now and immediately expect results, because eventually either your opponent's going to activate Twin Twister, blow up to your back row, or your opponent's going to kill a monster on your side of the field, and Vanity's Emptiness is going to be useless from then on. Even if you're playing against Monarchs, where that doesn't happen, you're going to have to play cards. You're going to have to play cards in conjunction to that, regardless. You're going to have to tribute summon eventually. You just can't sit there and win with Idea and IDOS. It's not going to happen. Similarly, from somebody who doesn't like Cosmos, I actually felt bad for Cosmos this format, because they were one of the decks that was getting the least amount of attention. The deck is broken. The deck is amazing. That doesn't mean that this deck should warrant a ban list, though. Mostly people believe that power creep is a thing, and the format is unfair. Let me give you a brief introduction of the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! And card games in general. Card games follow the same sentiment anyway. That if a card is considered balanced or fair, the player base doesn't care. They won't look at it. They don't care about the card. That's why cards like Stormy Mirror Force aren't being implemented, because they're considered fair. They're considered balanced. Now, some people might argue, well, returning your opponent's entire board to their hand or back to their extra deck, if you're talking about Rippling Mirror Force, is considered fair, then you're out of your mind. But however, when you think about decks that simply do not care about traps right now, that simply like, oh, okay, well, I have a farm ground on hand, I'm just going to remake the same board next turn. It's very difficult for traps to have a mainstay. Additionally, if a card is considered unbalanced and broken, it will be played. It will be played. Simple as that. Dark Destroyer isn't being played because Forerunner is too good. No, Dark Destroyer is better than Forerunner. And with that, and Forerunner is still technically being played. Now there might be cards for example might actually see the light of day again and might actually be playable. For example, Naturia Beast. Naturia Beast is one of the most power creep cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. It's one of the most power creep cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's actually one of the primary examples of cards returning back from power creep. Believe it or not, for the past 6 years, Naturia Beast is mostly useless. Naturia Beast hasn't been useless since Six Samurai format, which is around 2012. 2008, when Storm of Ragnarok was just dropped. That's insane. People don't understand that. People don't understand that Naturia Beast is one of the most irrelevant cards because it had no impact in the meta. But because it had an impact against one deck in the entire meta, everybody wanted this card banned because it stopped Pepe. Because it was a countermeasure, and if you set it up turn one, your Pepe couldn't play. While that may be true, but not every deck. The only deck that could really make this card, in all honesty, was Pepe. In terms of relevancy, it was only Pepe. People wanted this card banned not because it was played in Pepe, but because it was a countermeasure to Pepe, and it was only a countermeasure to Pepe because Pepe was playing it. People also bring up rituals as being MegaCapitalG also brought up the point of rituals being power creeped in the meta. They were. Necrons were a solution to that. Gishkis were not a solution to that. People believe that people had hyped up Gishkis so much, but knowing Konami's track record of releasing cards, they were released at a time where they were irrelevant. I believe that if Gishkis were released around Blackwing format, they probably would have tore the meta up, because everybody wanted to see that deck in action. But because of Konami's inopportune time to release Banlist at the time, Ghost Kraken, which is a card that we didn't even get a chance to see at 3, got limited because everybody believed that the card was too good. And then Necros rolled around in around 2014, and or 2015, excuse me. And still, the deck was still pretty good. However, it was actually power creep for about 2 weeks. You remember when Dark Matter Dragon for what was dropped, and Dragon Rules had that brief insurgent, and then they immediately got banned? You people should be complaining more about that deck being power creeped, about being destroyed by the ban list than Pepe ever has. Believe it or not, Dark Matter Dragon rules took up at least 60% of the format in 2 weeks. Necrons were considered irrelevant for 2 weeks. Cleaforts were considered irrelevant for 2 weeks because Dragon Rulers were so strong. And then the ban list came out, and then Dragon Rulers were all immediately banned. Then they started to damage control some of the Necros decks, and the Necros and Cleaforts by semi-limiting Scout and limiting Shuret, and semi-limiting Bionic. But Dragon Rules are primary example of cards of decks being power creeped out of the meta. Similarly, people also look at fusion decks and say, well, these decks have been power creeped out of the meta. Well, that's true. They have been. Elemental Heroes and Glabbeasts were the best fusion decks at the time before Ritual Beasts and Shaddolls came out. And once that happened, and everyone started to see how good they were, people believed that they were cancers on the game. You see this mental cycle it's just a visceral cycle that once a deck is popular, it needs to be banned. But then the same players will jump on the next deck, then complain about that same deck. Players are fickle in what they want. Players are fickle in what kind of game state that they want. If a deck is too good, everyone wants it banned. And once everyone wants it banned and they give it to them, they complain that Konami hit it too hard, or that they hit it too soon, or they hit it too frequently. Blackwings is a primary example of a deck that has been kicked repeatedly by the ban list and kicked while it's down. Blackwings first started receiving limits when Black Whirlwind went to 1, and Blackwing Gale the Whirlwind went to 1. The deck was still playable, and it actually still took a few spots from here and there, and it was still pretty good. And then once it won Worlds, it got the can. It got the can. It literally did. Icarus Attack went to 2, Kalut went to 1, and that was pretty much game over for Blackwings ever. Konami had to release more support to make that deck relevant and unleash it from the ban list, and it's still bad. People also want to bring up now these scrub decks like Psyframes and Magispectors and all of that can come back in the meta. Good. I believe that's a good thing. If we have more decks in the meta that can constantly compete with each other, that's a meta worth having. That's why I believe that the Cleafort, Necros, Shaddol, Burning Abyss meta is one of the best metas that we've ever had, because 5 decks took the top, could possibly take the top spot, possibly 6 if you consider Infernoids. And people want to complain about Pepe not living long enough. Do you realize that Shaddol's Burning Abyss and Sotella Knights lived for almost a year? Cleafort's I guess we will consider 8 months. Cleaforts and Necros were hit as hard as they were, and they were still good for another 8 formats. For another 8 months, not 8 formats. Excuse me. So, power creep definitely is also important for the game, because if that were the case, we would probably still be playing Goat Control and Tele-Dad and all that stuff, because heck, we don't want power creep in the game. No, that's actually a bad idea. Power creep is one of the worst things to ever happen. Power creep is the same as slavery. Oh my gosh, Konami has brainwashed us to believe that we're supposed to play these decks for 6-7 months and then condition ourselves to when they get hit. Oh my gosh, Pepe is so good. We need to ban it. Oh my gosh, now this deck is good. We have to ban it. Oh my gosh, so Telenuts are good again. We have to ban it. Do you see how ridiculous that mindset is? It's honestly just quite baffling. And also, do you believe? I also believe that the hit of Pepe is honestly a smart economic decision. Believe it or not, Wing Raiders came out a few days ago, and I believe that because of that, because Pepe was so strong, they had to do something about it, or else Wing Raiders wouldn't sell. Do you believe that? Do you believe that also, that if Pepe was still around when Shining Victories is about to be released, that people wouldn't do anything about it? Gold Series is coming out. They want that set to sell too, right? I mean, you have to keep everything into consideration, that because the deck gets hit, it's an economic decision. Konami is not stupid in that regard. They know that they can't profit from a deck like Pepe for long, and they won't. But they also realized that because Pepe was so strong, they were only the people who wanted to play Pepe were only going to buy the two sets. They're going to buy Dimension of Chaos and Bosch in the Pendulum Structure deck. Pendulum Structure deck, they weren't making any more money off of. People were selling it sealed anyway. Offhand, they would buy it from Konami and then sell it for a higher price. And people would buy just Dimension of Chaos and Bosch boxes because, well, Pepe is in this set. Pepe is good. Plus Fire is in that set. I mean, do you honestly believe that if Pepe was still at 4 floors, Shining Victory would probably not be sold? It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be as successful as Bosch because Pepe exists. They couldn't sell Digital Bugs. They couldn't sell the Blue Eye support. They couldn't sell the Ray Raptor support that's coming in there. They couldn't sell Morphages because of Pepe. They couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Also, I want to take the time to mention the Pepe player's attitude for the past few weeks, actually. In fact, I believe that Pepe is one of those few decks that had the most visceral fan bases in a while. Believe me when I say that when a fan base gets this bad, and then they cry about a ban list, it's different. It's really difficult to explain that these things kind of happen to them. When Monarchs was released, people said that it's not as good as Pepe. Cosmos isn't as good as Pepe. Pepe had this attitude. Players of Pepe instilled this attitude that because a deck wasn't as good as Pepe, it was considered bad. I'm going to touch on this briefly, but people believe that when MegaCapitalG talked about Usenju's briefly, everyone jumped down his throat because it wasn't as good as Pepe, or it wasn't as good as Cosmos, or it wasn't as good as Monarchs. It doesn't have to be considered decent. It doesn't have to be considered good. Sure, it might not be competitively good, but it's still good because it functions. A deck is pretty good if it functions. I believe that Necros would be a good deck if it still had the ability to function. It might not be the best deck, but it would still be a pretty good deck. And that's the attitude that I think that is very wrong with the Yu-Gi-Oh community, is that a deck can't be good unless it's as good as X, Y, and Z deck. It's not how a card game works. I also think that that Shining Victories is one of the probably one of the better sets. They were probably going to be getting it for a while. Sure, Shining Victory, it doesn't have as many, I would say, viable cards. You know, people aren't looking forward to Blue Eyes. Well, most meta players aren't looking forward to Blue Eyes. Who's looking for blue eyes? Who's doing that? Who's looking forward to blue eyes? I know there's gonna be some people that are genuinely looking forward to blue eyes, but do you think that could be good if Pepe was still around? I don't believe so. Anyway, I want to wrap this up because I don't want to take too much time and dawdle on this topic. Tell me what you guys think down below. And this is Tele-Dad, and I will be signing out. Tell me what you guys think about Pepe's banning, and what do you think will happen in the future of this. And let me know in the comment section below. This has been Tele-Dad, and I will be signing out for the second time. Later, guys.